Today we'll be taking a look at New Orleans, Louisiana, home to all the nightlife, bar scenes, jazz fest, and of course the biggest event of the year, Mardi Gras. But today we won't be talking about all that glamorous nightlife and party scenes. We're taking a step back, looking at Gentilly, quiet suburb located on the north side of New Orleans. Welcome to Gentilly. The neighborhood is bounded by two waterways to the east and west, and Lake Pontchartrain to the north. Diversity, higher education, and resilience describe this unique suburb of the city. Gentilly is often divided into 8 official neighborhoods. However, for all planning-related decisions and historical reference, this area is considered as one entire neighborhood. For city purposes, this area is Planning District 6. French colonists Mathurin and Pierre Drouot, which fell along Bayou Sauvage, neighborhood. For city purposes, this area is Planning District 6. French colonists Mathurin and Pierre Drouot first Sauvage as the site of their plantation. Let's talk to Brendan to better understand how planning works in the city.
In my work at Manning, which is an architecture and planning firm in New Orleans, we did some work at Dillard University where we wrote their next master plan for their university president. You have to really think about elevation a lot in the Gentilly area. It is suburban, but it's not necessarily suburban in the way we think about suburbia. Like, it's still part of the core city, but since it's kind of outside of the central urban area, it's not thought about as much in the city government, honestly. I think sometimes people feel that it's neglected to a certain extent and that they don't get as much done in the area. And that happens the further you get out. I've heard from a lot of people that the further you get out in the city of New Orleans, the further removed they are from local municipal action.
Let's also hear from Josh Johnson, a cook in the area and who has lived in Gentilly for over 2 years. You might recognize him from the famous series Queer Eye on Netflix.
Mainly, it's a bunch of younger college people that hang around closer to campuses. But once you get closer in the neighborhood of Gentilly, it's more family orientated.
Great crawfish and great bands. Let's go check out the University of New Orleans, also known as UNO.
It is the only large public university in New Orleans.
They have UNO too. They always have basketball, baseball games at UNO. UNO was always putting on concerts at the Lakefront Arena all the time. I couldn't even tell you the schedule on them because they do so much. Once they do once a month or once every 2 months. Everybody that I went to school with had a job and went to school, including myself. Man, so it's not easy going to college, and your parents are also working the same amount of hours you are a week plus going to school. So that's really what mainly UNO is. People just trying to make a better life for themselves while going to a school that's relatively cost effective and they can afford it.
But now things are changing.
The City of New Orleans now has to cut the school's budget and slash the athletics department by the spring semester. This is because UNO is facing a $15 million deficit caused by years of declining enrollment. Only 6,600 students enrolled last fall, which is a huge decrease compared to its peak in 2003 when it had roughly 17,000 students.
Over time, they've lost more and more students. Katrina, especially, the whole New Orleans area lost population, and UNO kind of reflects the New Orleans metro area. So it actually built the middle class of the New Orleans metro area during the last 50 years. So now that the population of the metro area has decreased, the population of UNO has also done the same.
Now let's check out the Dillard area.
That's the year in which both Straight University and New Orleans University were founded. In 1930, the two institutions merged to form Dillard University. But it wasn't until 5 years later that Dillard began instruction at its present site.
So the Resilience District basically encompasses the huge area in New Orleans, and there's a bunch of little projects planned from pocket green infrastructure where there's housing lots that are no longer there, because Katrina destroyed, a lot of houses in New Orleans. So some of the lots are getting bought up for green infrastructure purposes or pocket parks. They also are thinking about things like what we call the neutral ground, which is the median in the road, doing some like canals and other green infrastructure projects. And Dillard Wetlands is probably the biggest one, where there's this huge urban forest in New Orleans that's just an undeveloped area, completely undeveloped, like the one remaining area of swamp left other than City Park. And they want to make it into like a natural learning area where people can actually walk through on these like little paths and bridges through it. And part of the idea would be that if they could build a bridge over the canal right to Dillard University from there.
It was cool. Like, it was like the hustle, like you see the hustle and bustle of a main highway living on Gentilly, honestly, and you see a bunch of different things, like crazy things happen on a main road in the middle of New Orleans. Honestly, Gentilly, it was more like the people who like originally grew up in New Orleans and just like kind of stayed there. Like, I've met a lot of people that were like, yeah, I grew up in Gentilly with my parents. My parents still live out there. Compared to the rest of New Orleans, it's like people moving around and stuff. Like, it's a bunch of different people from all over. And Gentilly people are more just like the people who've been here since like before Katrina.
The whole topic about the resilience district and revitalization in Gentilly in general, because they have shopping centers in Gentilly too. They're just kind of underdeveloped or underutilized or don't have a lot of good offerings. The big issue though is that how do we, improve these areas without pricing people out? And that's the big concern. There's talks about green gentrification in Gentilly when it comes to the resilience district, that all this green infrastructure is going to price people out.
More like a park and less like an empty lot in 2019. The project is funded through a $141 million federal HUD grant. And if the test project works in Gentilly, you'll see water gardens throughout New Orleans. The largest one citywide.
Honestly, Gentilly doesn't flood as bad as
For
the
more
other
information on the
neighborhoods.
Gentilly.
Let's head on over to Gentilly Terrace and Gentilly Woods. In 1917, the Southern Baptist Convention voted in favor of a theological seminary in New Orleans. The first session opened in 1918 in the Garden District of the city, but later the school relocated to Gentilly Boulevard in 1953. The seminary currently serves as another school within this academically rich neighborhood.
That they're not particularly fans of the area that they're in, of what I heard colloquially from different people. They actually kind of want to move. The area that they're in now is a very commercialized corridor. That area was previously home to a shopping center, but after Katrina, that shopping center was abandoned and it was torn down, and they put a huge Walmart right there. And, people go there. It's obviously a very crowded location, but it's much more crowded than it was historically. Like, there's so much traffic in that area at all times. And not only is there vehicular traffic and pedestrian traffic, but it's also transit traffic as well. Like, the major transit hub for Gentilly is that Walmart.
Now let's check out Pontchartrain Park.
It's like how strong the people are there. Like, they're very resilient in Gentilly. Like all the floods that happen there. Like, I mean, I've lived through a few hurricanes that were there. Like, like it seems like the city just forgets about the construction going on in Gentilly compared to other parts. Seen in Gentilly, yeah, because it just seems like the city forgets about it.
Pontchartrain Park opened 1 year after the Brown versus Board of Education case in 1955. This case laid the groundwork to dismantle legal segregation in the U.S. The public park was at the heart of this development and could ensure to serve African American residents citywide. The chief motivator was to make sure that the city had to have provided a separate but equal recreational facility for people of color.